Hey everyone! Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, has just dropped bombshell revelations that are shaking the world. Jorge, the real man behind the Vatican's glow, emerges through fiery childhood memories and deeply hidden scars. A Francis you've never known, ready to leave you stunned. A shocking breakthrough. Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, tears through the veil of secrecy, unleashing stories that shatter every notion about Jorge. From radiant childhood days to the painful dark corners of his heart, a raw, unfamiliar Francis appears, poised to leave you jaw-dropped in awe. Are you shocked yet? Maria Elena's revelations about Pope Francis are truly turning everything upside down. If you believe this is a staggering truth, comment number 1 to show your astonishment. If you're skeptical, leave a number 0. Don't forget to like, share this video to let the whole world know, and hit subscribe to not miss the next secrets. On April 21, 2025, Easter Monday, the Vatican officially announced that Pope Francis had passed away at Casa Santa Marta. His death, though anticipated due to months of illness, still stunned the world. Not only for the loss of a beloved leader, but also for the many untold layers it exposed. A woman thousands of miles away from Rome, largely ignored by the global press, must have felt a deeply personal heartbreak. That woman was Maria Elena Bergoglio, Pope Francis's only living sibling. She was not a public figure, not a theologian, just a humble homemaker living quietly in Buenos Aires. Yet her voice rang out like a sudden crack in a seemingly perfect pane of glass. I watched him appear on that balcony and thought I might faint. I started sobbing and couldn't stop. That moment was simply overwhelming, she said. The moment Jorge Mario Bergoglio first stepped into the light as Pope in 2013 was not just a memory, but sparked a cascade of questions that even now few have dared to confront. Public records confirm Maria Elena was born in 1948, 12 years younger than Jorge. They grew up together in Buenos Aires in a traditional Italian household, their father a railway worker, their mother a devoted homemaker. She remembered her brother as firm but just, someone who, even young, walked a different path from others. He disliked large gatherings, shunned displays of wealth, and often wandered alone into poor areas simply to help. Some reports suggest the siblings shared a close childhood bond, though distance grew when Jorge entered the Jesuit order and rapidly advanced. By age 36, he became the provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, a role fraught with tension, especially under the shadow of military rule. His involvement with strict religious circles stirred concern within the family. Still, Argentine sources say Maria Elena never lost faith in him. He wasn't perfect, but he always followed his conscience, she told a local outlet in a rare interview. But once he became pope, the divide between them widened, not just in miles, but in structure. Vatican protocols discouraged papal relatives from too much visibility. Maria Elena, battling illness, frail and living in a quiet convent cared for by nuns, quietly slipped out of public awareness. When the Pope passed away, she couldn't make the journey to Rome. No goodbye, no final touch, no place at the funeral, not even her name spoken during the farewell. A few reporters asked, why didn't the Vatican ensure travel for his last surviving kin? But silence answered them. One theory lingers. Did she hold back all those years out of reverence for his spiritual office, yet when he was gone, refused to let the silence bury their shared truth? Off-the-record whispers claimed she was urged to stay silent so as not to damage the Pope's reputation. There were no grand speeches, no scandals, just the quiet truth that before he became a religious symbol, she knew the man he was. What she remembered didn't always match the public portrait. Have we truly understood Pope Francis at all? Or have we only seen what the Vatican chose to reveal? This question makes Maria Elena's story profound, prompting reflection on the real person behind the public image of the Pope. Explosive secrets. Maria Elena, Pope Francis's sister, storms in with revelations about Jorge that leave the world reeling. Childhood memories and hidden pain unveil a completely new Francis. Believe it's true. Comment number 2. Doubt it. Leave a number 5. Like, share, and subscribe now. If there was one thing that set Jorge Mario Bergoglio apart from past popes, it was his origins. He didn't come from noble European lineage, wasn't brought up behind Rome's historic church walls, and wasn't dressed in vestments as a child. His roots began in vibrant Buenos Aires, where blaring horns, late-night cafes, and the scent of working-class sweat played out in the drama called Argentina. He belonged to the streets long before he belonged to the church. Maria Elena, his sister, once said, "It was in that raw, unruly world that the soul known to millions as Francis was shaped, not through rituals but through hardship, pressure, and silent decisions." Jorge, the eldest of 5 in a family of Italian immigrants, was born in 1936. As a teenager, he hit the books and took on jobs to help out at home. He once worked in a chemistry lab, then as a security guard at a bar, a detail some dismiss as minor, but one he proudly confirmed in a 2013 interview. "Yes, I was a nightclub bouncer. It taught me how to handle people." Then, in his early 20s, everything changed. Jorge fell seriously ill with a lung condition, surgeons removed part of his lung, and he spent months recovering in the hospital. No one knows exactly what changed in his soul during that close call, but a year later, he enrolled at Villa Devoto Seminary, beginning the path that would define his life. In 1969, Jorge was officially ordained into the Jesuit priesthood, but his journey didn't mirror that of most fellow priests. By age 36, just 4 years later, he had become provincial superior of the Jesuits in Argentina, a title that held massive weight during those politically unstable years. Then came the darkest chapter that would shadow his legacy: Argentina's brutal military regime from 1976 to 1983. 2 Jesuits, Orlando Yorio and Francisco Jalix, were kidnapped and tortured by the junta. People asked, why didn't Jorge intervene? Had he cut a deal with those in power? Speculation took off from every angle. Some said he lacked the courage to shield his fellow clergy. Critics in the press accused him of staying quiet to avoid risk. But others, including witnesses, insisted he covertly saved lives, perhaps even the priests themselves, though not without them enduring suffering. From the family's point of view, Maria Elena rejected those doubts. In a seldom granted interview, she declared, "We were never fascists. We were as afraid as everyone else. Jorge tried to save people. He wasn't seeking influence." Despite the controversies, Jorge stayed the course. However, after his Jesuit leadership ended, there were whispers that he'd created too much tension within the Jesuit order. Some portrayed him as overly strict, pushing hard for obedience. The Vatican sent him to Germany, and later he taught in Argentine colleges, a kind of quiet exile reserved for those who stir the waters. Yet during that understated period, something deeper awakened in him. Lessons about mercy, simplicity, and the real limits of authority in a broken world. In 1992, he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires and quickly rose to Archbishop. He began drawing attention again, not for power but for his simple lifestyle. He used no luxury cars, cooked his own meals, and frequently visited the sick and poor, especially those battling AIDS, people shunned by society at the time. When the cardinals gathered in 2013 to elect a successor to Benedict XVI, few considered Jorge. At 76, he wasn't among the favorites, but as the church faced scandal and moral fatigue, they sought someone outside the usual mold. Jorge Mario Bergoglio was chosen. When he appeared on St. Peter's balcony, the world fell silent. Maria Elena recalled that moment. "I hoped they wouldn't choose him, not because he was unworthy, but because the burden is immense." Some believe Jorge's once-questioned past was exactly what prepared him to lead in new ways. He had known weakness, faced the church's wounds head-on, and never pretended to be perfect. For Maria Elena, that's why he remained her brother. Not a flawless pontiff, but a man who fell, got up, and kept learning how to show grace. Not a scholar, not a bishop, not a Vatican official, but Maria Elena Bergoglio, a quiet woman living in Buenos Aires, simply among nuns, tending her garden and praying daily. She holds a kind of understanding no one else can. Memory. In this story, that memory doesn't seek to challenge his image, but to bring the man in the white cassock back to earth, where family still deserves to grieve, to remember, and to speak. In an unexpected conversation with a local Argentine outlet, Maria Elena revealed what others were too afraid to say aloud. "I prayed he wouldn't be chosen, not for lack of merit, but because the weight is too heavy." A heartfelt and achingly honest confession. While the crowds cheered and the Vatican celebrated its Pope of Mercy, far to the south, a sister quietly mourned, not with pride, but with the aching knowledge that from that moment forward, her brother no longer belonged just to their family. Maria Elena once described Jorge as her brother and dearest companion. They shared not only childhood, but the darkest days of their family life. Illness, grief, financial strain. She recalled how Jorge once fixed her broken bike by hand just so they could ride to school together. Those moments don't appear in any official account, but for Maria Elena, they are the ones that endure. "He was silly, so warm. People see the Pope. I still see the boy who joked with me when I cried over spilled milk." But time carried them along separate roads. Jorge embraced the priesthood, demanding, sparse, and lonely. Maria Elena stayed behind in the everyday world. Despite the distance and different paths, she never felt truly apart from him until 2013, when Jorge became Pope. Everything shifted after Jorge became Pope. They spoke less often. Calls had to be arranged through others. Letters might never reach him. The man who once joined every family gathering became a distant face on television. Though Maria Elena never showed resentment, her words carried a quiet ache, as if the church had claimed a piece of her and never gave it back. Still, she never doubted Jorge's purpose or beliefs. She said that even knowing his mission to help the poor would stir opposition in the Vatican, he stayed the course. He kept visiting prisons, embracing migrants, declining the luxury of the papal residence. He didn't just talk about the poor, he chose their life. Maria Elena remembered when officials encouraged him to relocate to the Apostolic Palace and his gentle refusal. "Those walls are too thick. I can't hear the people in there." When asked if she felt pain not being at his side during history-making moments, Maria Elena simply offered a wistful smile. "He's part of the world now, not mine. I've accepted that, but I never stopped missing him." It wasn't jealousy. It was a kind of sorrow no one truly grasped. When the last member of your family becomes a symbol and your longing is left behind. A theory began to circulate after her story. Had the church perhaps intentionally distanced his family to protect the sanctity of the papal image? Reporters questioned her absence at the funeral, the lack of her name in official statements, and the silence regarding her request to see his personal effects. Still, she stayed calm and gracious. No blame, no bitterness, no demands. She only wished to speak to let the world see that before he wore white, Jorge was a brother, a friend, a man made of flesh and memory. "I don't care if the world knows me, but the world should know him, who he really was, the barefoot child, the man who wrote letters without fail, the brother I still talk to even now that he's gone." Maybe the Vatican will never respond. Maybe this silence will remain the way of things. Due to her fragile health and the care she received in a humble Argentine convent, Maria Elena couldn't make the journey to Rome. The Vatican made no arrangements to transport the Pope's only sister, and no formal acknowledgement was extended to her. At least, that's what her silence allowed the world to believe. Soon, global news outlets began raising uneasy inquiries. Why didn't the Vatican, with all its reach and influence, arrange a proper goodbye for his closest kin? Was it an unfortunate oversight or a calculated decision to ensure the Pope's legacy felt universal, not bound to blood? For Maria Elena, her choice to speak wasn't to demand recognition but to guard something priceless. The remembrance of Jorge, unfiltered by protocol, the page she wanted to offer the world before it fades forever. Friends disclosed that she cried for 3 days straight, repeating only one aching line. "I never got to say goodbye. That's the part that hurts me most." Never one for public exposure, Maria Elena never asked for any role in the church's spotlight. But as a grieving sister, missing her brother's last breath, not by will but by separation, was a loss too deep to define. She had once remarked in an old conversation, "The day he became Pope, we lost him. Jorge ceased to exist. He became Francis, and Francis no longer belonged to us." At the time, her words sounded like a wistful reflection, but after his death, they echoed as a sorrowful truth that the papal crown came at the cost of every personal connection, even family ties. A few South American reporters hinted that Maria Elena had hoped to speak with her brother before his death, as his health declined in April 2025. But according to internal Vatican sources, access to him was tightly guarded, limited only to medical staff and a few inner-circle cardinals. The question lingers. Was there truly no way to offer one final call, one last moment of voice or image for his sister? Or was it chosen this way to let the Pope exit this world as something larger than life, untouched by personal bonds? Though Maria Elena showed no bitterness, her expression carried a sadness no comfort could erase. She asked for nothing more. Not status, not favor, just the preservation of truth that before he was Francis, he was Jorge, her brother, her family, a son of Argentina, made of heart and bone. Not seated in the honored chairs of the basilica, not summoned to speak before the Curia, but Maria Elena Bergoglio carried something no one else could. A soul forever intertwined with Jorge from the days when his name held no fame. In a quiet exchange, Maria Elena recalled the final words Jorge gave her before his papal election. "I hope for a church that belongs to the poor and serves the poor." A plain and heartfelt remark, yet over time it became the foundation of Francis's mission as Pope. In Maria Elena's heart, it wasn't crafted for headlines. It was how he lived all along, from giving his sandwich to a hungry man near their doorway to politely declining a front-row seat at his first meeting as cardinal. He didn't preach his values, he simply lived them. His example was his voice. For Maria Elena, Jorge never became a distant pontiff. He remained her big brother with scuffed shoes, a rich tone when he spoke, and the neat habit of stacking old newspapers just so. A brother stern enough to ban cartoons after bedtime, yet soft enough to sneak coins into her bag when bills were tight. She mused, "History will honor Pope Francis as the man who redefined the Church's tone, the one who challenged tradition, the one who spoke boldly about migrants, the poor, creation, and grace." But to me, Jorge's greatest gift wasn't in speeches. It was in the truths he never had to explain. He didn't lead by invitation. He walked his path quietly, hoping others might follow. Many would later say that through her words, Francis was seen not as a saintly icon, but as a man who gripped his sister's hand at street crossings, a man who sent texts just to ask, "Did you have something to eat?" A man who rejected birthday cakes because someone sleeping outside could use that money. According to Maria Elena, his legacy doesn't rest in libraries, marble plaques, or medals. It lives in humble gestures, things he passed on to every family member and which she, the last of them, still carries in her bones. He may have left us, but I recognize him in every quiet kindness. That's the legacy he left me. Not the papacy, not the vestments, just love. There are tales you won't find in textbooks, not filed away in Vatican archives of papal reigns, not announced in solemn press releases by the Holy See. Yet they live on, quietly burning like faint echoes from a place long left behind. And once in a while, those echoes emerge from an unexpected voice, the Pope's sister. When Pope Francis, born Jorge Mario Bergoglio, died on April 21st, 2025, the entire church entered a sacred farewell, orchestrated with the Vatican's flawless ceremonial grace. World leaders sent their condolences, cardinals assembled beneath the Sistine Chapel's famous ceiling. Historic moments were broadcast everywhere. But within all that majesty, another silence lingered, one not spoken of, not printed, but sensed by many. The Pope's only living sibling, Maria Elena Bergoglio, was not there at all. Maria Elena's name never appeared in the official funeral plans. No Vatican remarks explained her absence, not one word in the tributes, not even a small bouquet marked from the family. In that absence, many quietly wondered, does the Pope's family, once he sits upon Peter's throne, vanish from his story? Then Maria Elena broke that silence in a few deeply personal interviews. She spoke not as a witness to history, but as a sister mourning the chance to hold her brother's hand one final time. Through those modest reflections, people began to see that Francis was more than the church's face. He was a man who gave too much to keep that face unblemished. People believe he lived peacefully, but Jorge carried sorrow, not just for the church, but for his own soul, Maria Elena explained. She had kept quiet for years, never wishing to disturb the reverence the Vatican wanted to preserve. But after his death, she felt it was her duty to preserve the humanity the world might forget in their veneration. In the modest convent where she lived alongside aging nuns, there was no Wi-Fi, no television, just a battered radio and weathered Bibles. Her days passed in prayer, tending her flowers and writing memories. She penned them slowly, line by line, stories of Jorge, not for books, not for praise, but so one day someone might remember that Francis had once simply been Jorge, the Bergoglio family's eldest son. He carried me when I was ill. That's the Jorge I hold on to. Not the Pope dressed in white, but the boy who had strong arms and kind eyes, she recalled. Little moments that biographies skipped, how he fed sparrows with leftover bread, how he called her Nana, a loving word in Spanish, formed the roots of someone who understood mercy, who bowed before the world's pain. What struck people most wasn't just how sweet she said he was, it was her honesty that he wasn't perfect. He made mistakes, serious ones, but he always tried to make things right. In today's world, where we ask too much of public figures, that confession hit like a wave. Maria Elena didn't claim he was saintly, nor did she hide his long silences or moments of hesitation. But she declared, he chose love every time, even when it hurt. After his death, Maria Elena received letters not from officials, but from ordinary people, from single moms, from priests sent away, from youth wrestling with faith. They didn't thank her because she was his sister. They thanked her because through her, Francis became human again. You returned him to us, one wrote. You reminded us he was real. Though the Vatican remained formal, offering no response to her words, the public reaction grew. Questions started to surface. Why was his only sister not part of his final farewell? Why couldn't the Church's memory of him include a sister's love? Was the Vatican worried that too much truth might soften the image they so carefully preserved? But Maria Elena wasn't seeking blame. She wanted no apologies, no spotlight. All she kept was the quiet flame her brother once lit in her heart and in the hearts of strangers. He didn't need sainthood, he just needed to be remembered fully, truthfully, as someone who always chose kindness, even when it cost him dearly. Now, each evening when the chapel bells toll, Maria Elena still lights a single candle beside her window. Not for the Pope, but for Jorge, the brother lost long before the Vatican opened its gates for his goodbye. He died within the Vatican's walls, but his story didn't stop there. It lives on in each soul brave enough to see him not as a figure, but as a brother. And perhaps, just maybe, that's where real sainthood begins, not in golden sanctuaries, but in the memories of those who loved someone just as they were. And so, we've just uncovered the earth-shattering secrets from Maria Elena about Pope Francis. A raw, emotional Jorge has left us all stunned. What do you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to keep exploring more shocking truths. See you next time.